This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hello everyone, I'm Nitahone, and it is Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Usually in this series, I look back at the game's history and rank cards based on their performance at Magic's highest level, but as usual, when a new set comes out, it takes over an MTG Top 10 where I give my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in the new limited format. Bomb is a word that has been devalued a lot over the years in Magic, as I hear people use it all the time for cards that I don't think are even close to being a bomb. I've actually heard people call Colossal Dreadmaw a bomb, for example. But for me, a bomb is one of the cards you most want in your sealed pool and that you most want in a pack one pick one situation. They are so strong that you even want to consider moving into their colors if you see them late, and they completely reshape the board when they come down. Most formats only have between 10 and 20 or so bombs. They are an exceedingly rare kind of card. So obviously the cards on this list are all rare or mythic. If you're interested in looking at all the cards in this set, I have also talked about all of them in my set review that either has come out or is coming out over the next few days. And I'll also be doing a video on the best commons and uncommons. It's sort of a Cliff's Note of my set review. And those videos obviously are sort of more helpful in a broader way because we're looking at cards of all rarities, and you're not going to get that many bombs in most drafts. However, still, I think it is useful to talk about the 10 most powerful cards in the entire set, and that's what we're doing here. So let's move to number 10. At number 10, I have Dragoo Set, Maw of Flames. Most of the cards on this list give you some value even if they die right away. Dragoo Set doesn't, and that does hold him down to number 10. The reason that's a really good thing to have is because no matter what happens, you're going to get some value out of the card, even if it gets pacifismed right away or something like that. Not so much with Dragoo Set. However, I think the fact that he's so ludicrously powerful, provided you get to untap with him, makes him make this list anyway. He does cost triple red, which is a real cost, but again, if you untap with him, you're just going to win the game. You get to do 10 damage spread among 3 different targets every time he attacks, in addition to his 7 power. He's often just going to give you a 4-for-1 at that point and just start bashing your opponent in the sky until they're dead. That is an incredibly powerful effect. Good luck beating this card if your opponent does manage to cast it and you don't have a way to deal with it, because you probably won't. There's pretty much no way you can beat it if that's what happens. At number 9, I have Amna, Locus of the Royal. So Amna is an elemental build-around, and if you don't end up with enough elementals, he's not quite as good. But there are 2 things that make it so that doesn't really matter. One of them is that he's in the 3 colors where there are a ton of elementals. You'll get them without even trying. They're the majority of creatures, basically, in those colors. The other thing is, even on his own, he is absurd. He's a 4-mana 3/3 that comes down and does 1 damage to something, and then he has a landfall ability where he gets bigger because he's an elemental. And if you get to enough lands in play, you also get to draw a card when you play lands more than 8. Obviously, he's going to be even better than that, but if he were a 4-mana 3/3 without any of the elemental synergy, he'd already be really good. Frequently, you'll play him and he'll do 2 or 3 damage to something, a good Flame Tongue Kavu impression, and then just get larger and larger and make your other elementals larger as things go on. He is gold, and that matters, but there is decent fixing in this set, especially if you're in green, and for that reason, I think you first pick him every time you see him, despite being gold, and I do think he's the only one of the tricolored legends in this set to really be so good that you don't really care that it's 3 colors. The other ones require a little more effort to build around than Amna does. So yeah, I don't see how you can't first pick this, and if this stays on the battlefield for more than a turn or 2, you're just going to win most of the time. At number 8, I have Night Pack Ambusher. This thing is really, really good. It's another card that's going to be better if you can kind of build around it, if you get some wolves. There aren't any werewolves in this set, so that part doesn't really matter. But there are other wolves that do make it better. But even without the help of other wolves, this is another card that doesn't really need to be built around, like Amna. It's a 4-mana 4/4 with Flash, which is already an excellent card. It's not a bomb, certainly, but it's the kind of card you can flash in and eat your opponent's 3/3 without really trying that hard. And that on its own would be like a first pickable card anyway. Not an incredible one, but you would first pick it sometimes. However, what I think really puts this over the edge is the fact that you start getting a 2/2 green wolf creature token anytime you don't cast a spell. And this means it's a 3/3 wolf creature token because Night Pack Ambusher pumps wolves. And you're going to end up in situations where it's like, well, is it worth playing a creature? Or is it better to just get this 3/3 and leave my mana up? And there will be times too where you're just flooding out. which is a nightmare normally, and you get a nice consolation prize of a 3/3 wolf creature token every time you're not able to play a spell, and that's really powerful. He's just going to turn into a token creation engine on top of the fact that he's just got really good stats in Flash. At number 7, I have Voracious Hydra. I really like how flexible this card is. When you need it to be, it's a good removal spell. You know, say you spend 5 mana on it, that means you're getting a 3/4 that enters the battlefield and fights something. That's going to be a 2-for-1 a significant percentage of the time, and that's great. However, if you're ahead and you don't really need to desperately kill something of your opponent's, you can also pay 5 mana for it and get a 5 mana 6/7 with Trample, and obviously it scales up from there. It's either a great finisher or a great removal spell, and I think having either of those options makes it one of the bigger bombs in the set that you first pick every time you see. At number 6, I have Gar Ghost, Vicious Watcher, our second Hydra in a row, and if you get these two Hydras together, it's going to be hilarious because Gar Ghost actually decreases the cost of Voracious Hydra, but I do think Gar Ghost is better despite having a more challenging mana cost. It does amazing on the vanilla test as a 6 mana 8/7 with Vigilance. That Hydra line really only matters for Voracious Hydra, so that's not really going to come up, but again, if it does, it'll be sweet. But what pushes it over to being a bomb isn't just those stats, it's the fact that any time a creature you control becomes a target of a spell, Gar Ghost fights something your opponent controls, and as an 8/7, it's going to be able to kill a lot of things. That means that if your opponent tries to use a removal spell on Gar Ghost, well, they're getting 2-for-1. That also means that if you use a trick on one of your creatures, well, you get to fight something. No matter what, Gar Ghost is going to give you value. There just aren't very many ways for your opponent to interact with Gar Ghost and come out ahead because that ability is just so powerful. And, you know, if they can't deal with him anyway, he's an 8/7 with Vigilance, who will be a great attacker and a great blocker. He's a really good card. The triple green is a real thing, but green will have an easier time getting to triple green than most other colors will in this cycle of legendary creatures because there are, you know, mana dorks and stuff that produce green mana in addition to your forests. So yeah, one of the biggest bombs in the set, obviously enough, since it's on this list. At number 5, I have Dungeon Geists. We just had a bunch of green creatures in a row. Now we're looking at something that's blue. This one's a reprint. It's easier to predict than the other ones because of that. A 4 mana 3/3 flyer is already a pretty good card, but this also acts as a removal spell, lets you tap down and lock down one of your opponent's creatures as long as it stays in play. This usually can make it so Dungeon Geists can start attacking in the air in addition to shutting down your opponent's best creature. It gives you value immediately no matter what, and you know that's a key thing I think for a card to really be a bomb. Dungeon Geist doesn't give you a ton of value no matter what. Really, all you'll get out of it if your opponent kills your Dungeon Geist right away is that you get to tap a creature down until, you know, your opponent untaps. But frequently, tapping something down does have some small effect on the board, and I like that in a worst-case scenario, Dungeon Geist still does something, and it'll usually do more than that. You know, it's just a highly efficient card. 4 mana is not very much for this powerful of an effect. It's just going to win you the game a lot of the time it comes down. Even if your opponent kills it after a turn or two, they're going to have lost some significant tempo in the race, and Dungeon Geist is great. At number 4, we have the first Cavalier to show up on our list. 5 mana, 5/5 flying is what Cavalier of Gales is. It's another card with a difficult mana cost, triple blue. All the Cavaliers have that, but they're all pretty good. I do only think 3 of them are bombs. Spoiler alert, 2 more will be on this list. But they're all pretty good, and they're all worth trying to play in your deck despite their difficult mana cost. In the case of Cavalier of Gales, you not only get a highly efficient flying creature who can win the game in a hurry in the sky, but you also get to brainstorm when it comes into play by, you know, basically getting some card selection and drawing one card is what you net there. When it dies, it does have probably the weakest of the death triggers of all the Cavaliers, but I also think it has the best stats of all the Cavaliers, and I think that evens out. Still, when it dies, it's not like the ability's bad. You get to scry 2, and you get to shuffle it into its owner's library. And Cavalier of Gales, obviously enough, like all the Cavaliers, does something even if it dies right away. In its case, you're probably going to get to do 2 things because they have Enter the Battlefield and Death triggers. Cavalier of Gales is great. At number 3, I have Chandra, Awakened Inferno. Chandra is the focus of this set, so of course they had to give her a super bomby Planeswalker at Mythic Rare, and that's what we have here. The fact that she can't be countered won't come up a ton, but her other abilities are all really good. You know, her emblem isn't the most impressive, but the fact of the matter is she raises her loyalty while making emblems, and if she goes away, the emblems she makes at least stick around. And if you can make 2 or 3 emblems, your opponent probably loses the game in a hurry. She also has 2 powerful abilities that help her control the board, between a board sweeping effect that kills creatures with 3 or less toughness that aren't elementals, and a -X ability that lets her do X damage to a creature or a planeswalker, and even lets you exile the thing. And if that does matter sometimes in limited formats, sometimes you get to exile cards with death triggers and stuff, and that's pretty great. I just think she's incredible. There's a chance that there are so many elementals in this set, and there are a lot of them, that her -3 is a little less powerful than I expect, but that might make her slip down this list a little bit, but I imagine she's still a bomb, even if that's the case. You can also build around her a little bit, by the way, by having elementals of your own and knowing that they won't be hit by that ability, and red does have a lot of elementals, so that can work out. So, Chandra, I think she's the best planeswalker in the set, but I do think there are 2 cards that are bigger bombs than her. One of them is another Cavalier, Cavalier of Night. Again, costs triple black, but doesn't really matter because the card is so powerful you should try to play it anyway, and you should first pick it anyway despite the difficult mana cost. A 5-mana 4/5 with lifelink may not be as impressive as Cavalier of Gales, for example, but this has much more powerful enter the battlefield and death triggers. When it comes down, you can bone splinters something, give up a creature to kill a creature your opponent controls, and sometimes that's not going to be great, but most of the time you're going to want to do that. You're going to have some dinky creature around who's not doing anything anymore, and he can use it to kill your opponent's best creature. And he synergizes well with his own ability because when he dies, you get to return a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So again, you're getting something with Cavalier of Night no matter what. In its case, you get to kill something, and then you get to bring something back. And it may be the thing you sacrificed in the first place if he does die. He can't really win the game single-handedly the way Cavalier of Gales can because of its evasion and its stats. But he's going to alter the board in your favor by a considerable measure when he comes into play. And at number 1, I have Cavalier of Flame. To be honest, I could definitely see the top 4 or so on this list sort of changing places with one another, and that wouldn't surprise me. But for now, I do think the Cavalier of Flame is the biggest bomb in the set. Has the same difficult mana cost all the Cavaliers have, but, obviously you first pick it all the time. It is able to give your whole team +1/+0 and haste, and that's a nice ability to have. It also means that if you draw this late or you're able to play it late, you actually get some additional value out of it right away. You can give it haste and +1/+0 when it comes down if you have 7 mana available, for example. It has a nice Enter the Battlefield trigger that lets you throw away any cards in your hand you don't need and draw that many cards. If you're playing with your Cavalier and you know your curve tops out at 5 or 6 or whatever, you should probably think about starting to hold on to lands just because it's going to make that Enter the Battlefield trigger a lot more powerful if you do. It's going to drastically improve the quality of cards in your hand if you're able to do that. And then, like Cavalier of Night, it has a second ability that synergizes really well with the first one. Assuming you pitch some lands into your graveyard, he's going to do some serious damage to your opponent and their planeswalkers when he dies. If you're just doing 2 or 3, that's some serious additional value added on top of Cavalier of Flame just having really good stats. That ability to give haste and +1/+0 to things matters a turn he comes into play, but it also really matters on subsequent turns because everything you play, if you're willing to pay 2 additional mana, will be able to attack right away and have more power. So I think Cavalier of Flame will very swiftly end the game if it comes down because of those stats and that activated ability. And I think that makes it the biggest bomb in the entire set. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, including the more traditional ones that look at Magic's history, or you want to catch some more of my limited content, including draft videos, which will be coming very soon, of course, that 2020 draft videos that is, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to see my set review, the playlist for that should be on the screen now. Thanks for watching.